This is sugar. Once a luxury available only to the rich. For ages, it's been one of the most sought-after spices all around the world. Finding its roots in Far East Asia, it's made its way across the world. Now, it's so common, it's in items you wouldn't even believe. This is white gold. But what if we didn't have sugar? The sweetness of the brown butter sparked an idea. We didn't always have sugar, so how did we add sweetness before? So here's the plan. I'm going to make a cake recipe that stands up to modern expectations. We're going to start simple with a pound cake. Our pound cake recipe is going to work like this. It's going to be 150 grams of flour, 150 grams of butter, and 150 grams of eggs. That's about 3 eggs. And then instead of the sugar, we're going to use 150 grams of honey. Just equal weight measures of flour, butter, eggs, and instead of sugar, we're going to substitute in honey. I've added the softened butter and honey to a bowl so I can whip it together. Then the eggs. 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll whip the eggs in with the butter-honey mixture. Don't forget some vanilla. It came out looking a little bit like scrambled eggs, but that's okay. It's still just a test. Then sift in the flour, salt, and baking soda mixture. And then combine your wet and dry mixtures. We'll add that batter to a pan, bake it at 350 degrees, and let's see what we have. This first test tells us a lot. Honey definitely caramelizes faster than sugar, so we have to be careful how high of a heat and also how long we cook our cake for. Also, the crumb looks pretty good, but in the mouth it definitely feels pretty dense, so we're going to have to do something about that. The biggest problem is there just isn't a lot of flavor, so we definitely have to do something about that. And I think we can take some inspiration from our old recipes that we were looking at. When we look at the recipe from Ramesses II's tomb, along with those from the Roman period and the Middle Ages, we see that they not only use honey to flavor their cakes, but they also use fruit, nuts, and spices to add flavor and sweetness to their cakes. Honey is also making the cake more dense. So I'm going to change the way we make the batter to make a lighter cake. Here's the plan. I'm going to make 2 cakes. One that adds chocolate, raspberry, and maple syrup flavors to our cake, and one that adds black tea and lemon flavors to our cake. To deal with the texture issues, I'm going to borrow a technique that's used in French pastry making. So we're going to make this in a style of a genoise cake. First, I'm going to cook down some raspberries till I can pass them through a sieve to get rid of their seeds. I'll need these for later. This looks about right. Next, I'm going to get my cake pans ready. I've melted some butter and I'm brushing that into both pans. Now these are going to go into the fridge where they'll set, and it'll almost guarantee that the cakes won't stick. My estimation is that I'll need about 1 egg per cup. The pans I'm using require 6 cups of batter, so that means 6 eggs. With a Genoise cake, you add your eggs and sugar to a pan. Obviously in this case I'm using honey. And then it has to be beaten over a pot of simmering water. The idea is to beat as much air into the eggs as possible, a bit like a meringue. But you're also heating the eggs and honey to help them combine. I'm regulating the temperature by taking the bowl on and off the pan and putting it on the counter to let it cool. You need to stay under 113 degrees Fahrenheit. And I like to go between 100 and 110. When you start to see this ribbony texture, you're close to being done. And then you can check your work by drawing a ribbon in the batter. I'm adding a little bit of the batter to the melted butter to help mix it in. And for the lemon and tea cake, I've also added the lemon zest and tea. Add it back to the bowl and start sifting in your dry mixture. You'll need to carefully fold it in. The dry mixture does have baking soda in it, but don't just rely on that for all the air, otherwise it will come out too dense. I try not to lose more than half the air in the batter while I combine the wet and dry mix. Then after I've dusted the chilled pans, I'll pour in the batter and tap them on the counter to help them settle. Now that our cakes are in the oven, we're going to work on our other flavor components. We're going to make a honey lemon glaze and a raspberry and maple syrup coulis. These are pretty easy. I just take an 80-20 mixture of honey and lemon juice and add it to a pan. And for the raspberry and maple syrup, I pass the raspberries through a sieve just to make sure it's smooth. And then I add maple syrup. Both of these are going to boil. Reduce the honey glaze till the bubbles become big, just like this. And you'll see the raspberry sauce thicken and become darker in color. By now my cakes have finished baking and I can cool them on the counter. Then to finish them, I'm going to brush the chocolate cake with maple syrup and brush the glaze onto the lemon tea cake. Finally, I'll pour the raspberry sauce over the chocolate cake. These cakes were exactly what I was looking for, and the principles to make them are pretty simple. Here are the 5 principles to make your own honey cake recipe. 1. We're going to base all the batter measurements around eggs. And you need 1 egg per cup of batter. You'll need to whip as much air into the batter as possible following the method I've shown in this video. 2. For every egg, you're going to need about 7.5 grams of melted butter and 1 gram of baking soda. 3. Your flour and honey ratios are the same. For every egg, you're going to need 30 grams of flour and 30 grams of honey. 4. To really bring out the flavor in a honey cake, you're going to want to add more flavors to it. Think spices, chocolate, fruit, anything else that you can add more flavor is great. 5. You'll also want to brush a simple syrup onto your cake. Think either just maple syrup or honey, that will work perfect, or you can add flavor to your simple syrup, like we did with our lemon cake. Now let's put these principles into practice and reconfigure that pound cake recipe that we made in the beginning. Our pound cake recipe needed more flavor, so I'm going to use principle 4 and add cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, and apples to our recipe. I've gathered together the apple, cinnamon, and nutmeg, and I'm going to make a chunky applesauce that will be sweetened with honey. I've added everything to the pan, stirred it, and then let it cook with the lid on. When the apple pieces break apart with a spoon, they're ready to be used. During all my research, I kept hearing about how acacia honey was one of the best and sweetest honeys. So for this test, I'm going to switch out our wildflower and clover honey for acacia honey. Now to make the cake. I've gathered together the nutmeg, vanilla, cinnamon, and the cooked apples, the honey, eggs, and flour mix, and I'm going to whip the eggs and honey over a pot of boiling water. Once we're at the ribbon stage, I'll sift in the flour, salt, and baking soda mix and pour in the melted butter. Then I'll add the spices and I'll gently fold it all together. I'll pour a little bit of batter into the pans and layer in apples, then more batter and more apples until all the batter's gone. These came out light and beautifully golden brown. I've kept some of the apples and added them to the top of the cake, and then I'm going to drizzle some honey on top of them. These cakes came out beautifully tender and soft and so good. Let me know if you're going to try making your own cake recipe, and if you really like this video, you're going to love the video I have for you next.